Good, very good. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the it's October meeting. October meeting.
Take us back.
There you go. We're making progress. Welcome to the meeting, and we are delighted to have Cheryl Wilson with us this evening to have the invocation for us, and so prayer, and so that would be great, Cheryl. You can. Where's a good place for it? Right here would be great.
Thank you for having me.
Thank
Thank
you.
you for welcoming us today.
All right.
I'm honored to be here. Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we come together and thank you for the beauty of these mountains and this community in which we live and call home. Prayers for the safety and health of all town employees. We pray for your watch care of this community and its leaders. We pray that in the season of change, with the glorious fall colors on our mountains, that we remember those in our community who struggle daily to meet their basic needs. Help us remember to show your love and mercy to those we work with, live with, and the strangers among us. Bless this meeting and the decisions that are made. We thank you for your loving kindness to each of us. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Thank you.
And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, ladies. Just a couple of announcements before we move on into the rest of our agenda. First, I want to send our condolences and thoughts to Councilmember Portilla, who lost his father-in-law, passed away last Thursday, and your father-in-law was a police officer.
Assistant Chief of Police, Mecklenburg County.
Yeah, for his career, and so loss for the family and Archie's wife, and just know we'll keep y'all in our prayers.
Thank
And then have some congratulations and good news. Our town manager, Josh Harrell, recently received the Credential Manager designation from the International City and County Management Association. And it's a rigorous process to go through to obtain that credential. You qualify by, one, having 13 and a half years of professional local government executive experience. So prior to his appointment in 2018 as town manager, Josh served as planning director for the town of Louisville, North Wilkesboro, and town Black Mountain. And Josh has also made significant contributions to other professional organizations that he's involved with as a manager in municipal government. The North Carolina Association of Zoning Officials, he was on the board of directors for 6 years, served as president from 19 to 20. And Josh is also a member of the North Carolina chapter of the American Planning Association as a certified planner through the American Institute of Certified Planners. Josh, we're proud of you.
Thank
Josh, thank you. Glad you're able to do that. And Cheryl left, but Councilmember Portilla must have participated. It looked like a great crew out there walking yesterday. Do you have anything to report on that?
Yeah, it was a great crew. It was really nice to see that our neighbors came together to participate in that. It was really great to see, and it was a large crowd.
It was great. Glad you could be there. Glad you could be there to represent the town. Thank you. So that will take care of that, and we're on to citizen comments. We have some folks who have signed up. If you would, when I call your name, just remember, one, that your comments are limited to 3 minutes. And also, if you just state your name and your address when you get up. We have Larry Pearl.
Is it okay to take the mask off?
If you sit there, that'd be fine.
Larry Perlman, 203 North Park Lane. Ladies and gentlemen of the Town Council and Mr. Mayor, I have copies here of an email I recently sent to all of you that fills in details about the situation that I'd like to address today. I'll pass these out when I'm done, that way you won't be reading them while I'm talking. Limited to 3 minutes, I'd like to get to the crux of the matter. A development project is about to be pushed through, even though it does not meet the zoning requirements of the neighborhood, nor adhere to the land use code as adopted by the Town Council, quote, to protect and preserve the area's scenic beauty natural resources, parks, and green spaces, unquote, as stated on the town's website. This property has been designated as a substandard lot by Buncombe County assessors with an assessed value of $0 for as many years as it has been privately held, so the owner has paid no taxes on it for the past 25 years. Shortly after town residents began inquiring about this parcel and its intended use, the status curiously changed to residential lot, even though considered unbuildable for all these years. The anticipated negative impacts of this development on the wildlife and the neighborhood are outlined in this email. Most upsetting to the neighbors is that we have been told that the builder does not have to follow the zoning requirements being followed by all other homeowners in the area because the property was once buildable and therefore has a legally non-conforming status. We have not found nor been presented with any evidence that this is true, even though 3 of us have filed separate public records requests. Having done our own research, we have found that this property does not meet the minimum depth standard of the least stringent zoning code in the past 40 years. In short, it never met the zoning codes and so should not be considered legally non-conforming. Though it is true that this land is privately owned, we as citizens are concerned that the town may be allowing development that does not meet its own zoning codes and is not in the best interests of either the neighborhood or the town. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. Lee, Reading, I'm sorry. Thank you. Larry, get your mask back on if you would.
Thank you.
Go right ahead, Lee.
Yes, sir. Can we go full screen or is that? Thank you very much. Okay. My name is Lee Redding. My address is 211 North Park Lane, where I've lived since 1986. My message tonight is to ask council to take immediate action to permanently protect our town's parks. I'm going to illustrate my comments with a few photos. The first 4 show a parcel of land sandwiched between North and South Park Lane, running from Oakland Avenue on the upper end down to Laurel Circle and Rhododendron Avenue on the bottom end. At the top, there are 10 condos pictured here, and at the lower end, there are 4 townhomes, all built by Bill Allen over the past 20 years. What you may not know is that this land was given to the town many years ago, and that the J.C.'s constructed a pocket park at the upper end, which was there when we purchased our home in 1986. The rest of the property, heavily wooded, with a live stream running the length of it, provides excellent habitat for birds and wildlife and acts as a natural sponge for collecting, slowing, filtering stormwater before it drains down into Lake Tomahawk. In the early 1990s, former town manager Al Richardson and former mayor Carl Bartlett sold this property despite a great deal of protest of adjacent homeowners and the J.C.'s. At about the same time, a town-owned parcel of land located directly behind the current police station at 101 West State Street was also sold by Al Richardson. That small lot had about a dozen mature hardwood trees on it, similar to the pin oak across the street, which is in our Treasured Trees program. His motivation, as he told me at the time, was to build the tax base by disposing of surplus land that could be developed commercially. My next photo is of our wonderful Town Square Park. The development of that asset took many years, a lot of volunteer labor, a tremendous amount of fundraising, and quite a strong public relations effort that was needed to convince the Board of Aldermen at the time, several of whom felt that this property would serve the town better if it were developed commercially by the private sector. In fact, a large chain drugstore was ready to sign a lease for the site. That was a near miss. However, today the park does not have permanent protection.
Lee, your time has expired.
I have a full copy of my comments. I'm sorry you wouldn't let me finish.
Lee, I said you had 3 minutes
Yeah, I was sorry.
before but 3 minutes and 3 minutes. You have the
Thank
same
you.
amount of time as Larry did.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. Sean Sloan.
John Barry? Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, John, you are next, forgive me. Good. I skipped right over.
Thanks for the time, I appreciate it. So I'm going to talk about North Park Lane as well. And I'm just going to give you my personal experience. I'm a longtime resident of Black Mountain. I live here with my wife and 2 kids. And when we moved to Black Mountain in 2009, we bought a house on North Park Lane, 209 North Park Lane. I don't know if I said that earlier. I know you wanted to.
Thank you.
At any rate, we were told at the time that the land across the road from our house was a wetland area that could not be built upon because it was wetlands. And so that gave us security in knowing that sort of our little neighborhood area was going to stay as it was. And not long after that, I saw the town land use plan, land use map, which identifies all the different parcels in the town. And the piece of land that was deemed wetlands is now deemed, or then was deemed, green space. So again, that kind of confirmed our idea of what could possibly happen in the area and how that land was going to be treated. And also even today, I'll just give you some information off the town website. You may have seen it before, but it says here, the purpose of the land use code is to ensure orderly, attractive, and economically sound development to protect the existing property values within the town of Black Mountain. In addition, the land use code adopted by the Board of Aldermen protects and preserves the area's scenic beauty and natural resources, parks, and open space. And there's also a section in the zoning code on land use, and it says these policies are intended to protect the individual property values, preserve the natural resources, parks, and open spaces, minimize risk to property, water quality, flood damage, and stormwater, and protect the environmental health and safety from natural man-made disasters. And a lot of these issues are arising with this potential building. So given all this, as homeowners, when we decided to move, we based our decision sort of on what we expected to happen. And we decided to buy a house, we decided to live there, we decided to stay there, and we really like it. And what I'm concerned about is the fact that this building thing is getting pushed through, and we feel like we're not getting an opportunity to really have a say or understand everything that's happening. And what I would ask of the council is just to give us that opportunity to have, I don't know how this board works, but if there's a way to have a discussion within the board or for the public, I would really appreciate that opportunity just to know what's going on and maybe have an opportunity to speak about it, if that's possible.
Thank you for your comment.
Okay.
Finished. Yeah,
All right,
for
thank
your
you.
comment. Certainly we can, the zoning and planning is handled by our zoning planning director, Jessica Trotman, and the town manager. And of course, they're under the government of these elected officials here, the town council. But the best people for you to talk to would be, and I know that the town manager has communicated on this topic some, would be the town manager. And I will ask the town manager to set up a meeting for anyone to come. And
Tomorrow, 4 o'clock.
okay, very good. You got it. Tomorrow at 4 o'clock.
Okay,
But the comment section's over.
okay.
John,
I was hoping the board would get to decide, because we talked to the town managers, it seems like they made a decision, and we haven't been a part of it.
I don't think a decision's been made. If you'll come tomorrow at 4, that's how the issue can be addressed.
We've been told they made a decision.
Yes, Sean.
Good evening. I'm Sean Sloan, 115 3rd Street, Black Mountain. I wanted to just follow up with what Mr. Redding's comments. I think what he was driving at, or what his conclusion that he was going to make an appeal to you for, was that we rezoned the park, Veterans Park, back to non-commercial use. It was zoned commercial in order to implement the daycare project, and also to place deed restrictions on our park lands so that they can't be changed at the whim of the different administrations that come. They're really important to the town, and personal interest can be placed ahead of others. So I think that was his appeal, and I would certainly echo that too. I also, I've been told that in marketing, you have to have 7 impressions for a message to sink in. So I thought I would repeat some comments that I shared with you all in the August Town Council meeting regarding Veterans Park. You guys have a mandate through the Elevate Black Mountain and through your elections in the recent, it's your appointments to the board and the support of the public. And I wanted to encourage you to think big about Veterans Park and to consider redesigning and thinking of doing a new master plan or a master plan for the park. The new Blue Ridge interchange is coming, which is going to generate a whole lot of growth in the area, and it will make the park more appealing. And right now, I don't think the park, while it's functional, I don't think it's something that we can be proud of. And it can be something that can be an anchor, a new attraction for the community as well as for visitors, and would help us in economic development and supporting our local economic base. And we're so lucky that we have the Swananoa River that runs through it. And if we made an entrance that we could be proud of, right now it's like weeds and nothing. So I think it could really be a stunning place. We could enshrine the community garden, which now is again at the whimsy of each administration. I know that there was a proposal to cut the administrator's position in the budget about a year ago. So anyway, I think if you guys can think big about considering how we can make that really a gem, it could also replace the greenway partial portions that we're disappointed we haven't had, or an artful greenway now that it's going to go through the town.
Comments, Sergeant?
Thank you very much.
You bet. Thanks for your comments. We are to communication from staff, and that would be Mr. Jamie Matthews to talk about streets and parks. Thank you, Jamie. Glad you could be here. I know that maybe was a demand performance, not a command performance.
Yeah. Well, good evening. So this is a little unique report for the year for streets and parks, considering everything that's happened with COVID. So it really put a lot of our funding on hold for our capital projects. For the year, and you can see that there was only one capital project, which was the Cherry Street bump outs, which is when we made it to one way, and we created the bump out stuff, which turned out really good, and we've not had any complaints or concerns in a long time. So I think everything's functioning properly there and doing good, and I think people's happy with it for the most part. The rest of the capital projects was put on hold due to COVID for last year, and because we didn't know what the projection was going to be for the rest of the year on funding, or where we was going to be at, which we turned out better than what we thought we would. So that was really good news. And but we did have some projects and some new stuff pop up that was really a team effort across the board. And so we had written an emergency action plan for each department. I know each department head had to come up with that based on natural disasters and things of that nature. So each one of us did come up with a plan for each department. We completed that. We do monthly building inspections now, which is something new that come up, to try to help maintain town properties and keep them in better shape and foresee things before they happen, which can save in the long run on cost. We also met with Asheville, Weaverville, and Marion in reference to sanitation, and got some of their funding and talked to staff, and we actually pulled their budget, and that's how we come up with, what we needed to get sanitation off and running. And I'll touch base on that a little bit more. I added that in on this report just to sort of give you an update. It's not a full year's review, but it is 9 months, and there's some good numbers in there, and so we'll go over that in a little bit. Also, we done, as far as MS4, our stormwater training and spill response, illicit discharge. We do training on that every year and work with planning on that real close. And we have found some illicit discharges, and when we do find those, we actually take samples of the water just like we would a leak, and then we send it to the lab and have it tested to make sure what's coming out of it. And thankfully, we've not found anything to be an illicit, something to be concerned about. A lot of it's been groundwater or things of that nature that where old house places was and the pipes are still in the ground. But we do look for that stuff in nature and address it now as it pops up. Our stormwater reporting, Jessica may have touched base on this a lot in the past, where we got a new software system now to where when we're out and we do anything related to stormwater, whether it be culverts, ditching, anything related to it, it goes, the guys come in, the supervisors come in the evening, they log all this into the system. It goes straight to planning, and then it helps us pertain our stormwater permit annually. So that's really going well too, and becoming a smoother process. OSHA inspections, we actually met with OSHA, had them come on site, go through our building, which was good considering we're in a new building. They gave us the recommendations, and thankfully, we only just had a couple of violations, one of them just being sensors on our bay doors, to where if somebody walks under it, they'll automatically open. So everything they recommended, we completed on that in the time that they allowed, and got some good information from them. So we should be good on our OSHA compliance in the new building. Bridge inspections was due last year, where we take the 7, 8 bridges we got in town that we're responsible for. We piggyback the state. They come in every 2 years, inspect our bridges, and then we have recommendations on what to fix. And then I go to work on getting a contractor to come in if it's something we can't fix in-house, and get the bridge repaired, send it to Raleigh, and then we're good for another 2 years. We had some walls constructed at the building that was part of a COVID relief fund, which actually come at a good time because it protects staff from people that come in our building when the buildings was open, and it also, because it was such an open place, it really played into effect as far as an active shooter situation, which I know we had training on, and so that worked out really well. Changed everything in the building, and it separated the departments, and so it works good. Tree City USA, we apply for that every year. We got it again this year. Just to give you a little update on that, it basically, they go by what we do. It's tree trimming, street maintenance. It's a lot of information that's collected and that has to be turned in to obtain that. So I know the crews, and I know Tasha, and everybody does their part collecting that information, but we did get that award again this year. We ordered our sanitation trucks. We received them, of course. They've been going. And our hemlock inoculation, we usually do about 300 trees a year, 1,000 in total. We do them every 3 years, so we rotate. And that was completed. So we had way more projects than we did capital projects. Our total work orders for the past 3 years, you can see we were up in 2020. That could be for a lot of reasons, and I hate to sound like a broken record, but for some of the new council members, a lot of this is seasonal. We'll do more in the summer than we do in the winter sometimes, because unless we have a worse winter than what we normally have. But these numbers can fluctuate, but they'll usually stay within 1 to 300 range. So consistent on the work orders, of course, and then total work orders, we sort of broke it down to where you can see where most of the time goes, and you can see that the biggest majority went to town properties. And there's a lot goes on the properties, as far as maintenance. It can be electrical, it can be painting, it can be water damage. It's just the same as taking care of a residence, but just on a larger scale. And of course, we got everything from library to museum to the arts, and town hall. That includes all buildings. So 42% of that went to town properties out of that 2,300. The town property maintenance, I went ahead and broke that down and showed you that 23%, the biggest majority of that went to miscellaneous parks. And that can be something that's not in our system for work orders as far as, erecting a fence or doing some kind of drainage project or rebuilding picnic tables, or it could be anything of that nature. But as far as the work order system goes, then you can see that, most of the places like Lake Tomahawk, had 84 work orders. Downtown restrooms, that's consistent, something we do every day, took 167, and then, Veterans Park took 125, and that's usually the most, if you can tell, it's usually the most visited areas in the parks that get the highest amount of work orders, which makes sense. And then something I wanted to throw in to make the report worthwhile, I wanted to give you the update on the sanitation statistics. So, like I say, this is not for a full year. This is actually from October when we started till June, which is a total of 9 months. So for each one of those months, at the top, it gives you the total amount of tonnage of trash that we picked up for that month. But it averaged out to 231 tons, right at 232 tons of trash in 9 months. Recycling, it averaged 50 tons in 9 months. And then the brush pickup, which is something we still find amazing to this day because it never slows down. And, in the month of October, there was 1,031 brush stops for that month. And then in June, there was 830, but there was a total of 5,510 stops, individual stops, in 9 months for a total of, average of 612 a month that we do for brush. Bulks and white goods, it averages 133 a month. Of course, we do white goods every Friday, and then bulk like furniture and stuff like that is, you get 1 free pickup a month, and then after that you can get more, but it's $25 per item. But still, for 9 months, that's some amazing numbers as far as what we pick up. And the good thing about us tracking it like this is we can see what months, and of course you see around October to November, the holidays, of course you'll have more tonnage. But then again, in the spring and summer, you see more tonnage on the brush because everybody's out working, and then of course we have storms and things of that nature. But other than that, I didn't want to really touch base on some of the stuff we do that's just repetitive, like, patching potholes, stormwater, ditching, trimming trees, taking trees down, mowing grass. That never ends. That's year round, except for the grass. Of course, it comes to an end probably next month. But I absolutely stayed busy. But one thing I did want to mention, sort of off base from the report, and I think it's important, is during the COVID, during all the changes and stuff, I just want to thank the team that I work with. I work with some good people. They come together as a team, and we worked really close, and we done some team building during that time, during COVID and stuff, and it sort of helped relieve the stress and things of that nature. And I'm just proud to work with the people I do, and very thankful. And I just think that needs to be heard. So, but if anybody's got any questions, I'll be more than glad to do my best to answer.
Jamie, for snow removal, did we engage the same firm that could come in case we're just overwhelmed to come in and give us a hand?
We did, and that's something I failed to mention. I apologize. We did have a mild winter last year, but we did have one storm, if I remember correctly, but it was really not that severe. But we did call them to come in, and we're still locked in a 2-year contract with them. Good news is, on the mild winters, we did not spend a lot of money, so we did not spend a lot of PAL bill funds or anything of that nature pushing snow. So I know people love snow, and I do too, but for the town's purposes, I like it when we can save that money because it gets expensive when the snow's hit. So,
Council, anybody questions?
Yeah, thanks for the report, it's really helpful. And I just wanted to get back to this topic about sanitation. Just to mention, 232 tons going to the landfill every month is amazing to me and of great concern. I actually campaigned on this issue about finding ways that we can reduce what's going to the landfill. And I know that's not you just pick it up, right? It's not your job to reduce it, but I'm just throwing this out because it seems like a pertinent moment to say that I had some initial conversations with Josh and the appropriate staff to see what we can do as a town to expand our capacity, for example, for public compost receptacles. And I know Asheville and Buncombe County have just partnered in that, and you know, they're documenting things like in one Buncombe County building, 67% of its waste could have been recycled or composted. And in 3 Asheville Parks facilities, 48% of what was in that garbage could have been composted. So I'm not sure what our statistics are, but I'm really excited about exploring that, researching it, and seeing what we can do to, you know, lighten the load. Because whatever we can do to keep stuff out of the landfill not only saves us money, but it's saving the earth. We don't need that stuff in the landfill. So I'm just kind of excited about that topic. I never dreamed garbage would get me so excited, but it turns out it has.
Yeah, and what'll be interesting to me is to see like a 3-year review of this, how the numbers change or if they stay consistent, you know. And I do need to mention that, you know, Tasha applied for a grant and, you know, about recycling, and some of the flyers that you received at home about recycling, if you got those, that is because of her receiving that grant. So, you know, we're always looking for opportunities for grants to, you know, to make things better or easier. Right now, we got 7 employees. We got 3 rear loaders, a brush truck, and 2 scout trucks, and they do 1,000 stops a day. So that's a phenomenal amount of stops, you know, and you've got to be into the transfer station by 4 o'clock. So they come in before daylight, inspect their trucks, get to going around 7, and they're at the transfer station at the farmer's market by 3:30, 4 o'clock, picking up 1,000 stops. So that's getting it done. And so I'm very thankful for the crew that we have. And, you know, we get a lot of compliments about the stuff they do. And so proud of that department. I know that we have talked about, you know, now that our year's up, I'd like to sit down, and I mentioned to Josh that we need to sit down and, you know, and look at what's working, what could work better, and just fine tune everything, you know, and then if there's any changes to be made, then of course we would get with council and go from there. But right now, I mean, it's running exceptionally well, I think.
Yeah, any other questions, council?
Do we currently work with restaurants to pick up their garbage, or no?
Well, it depends. Some of them we do, and then some of them have dumpsters. And, you know, and then that's a fee they pay to like Waste Pro. And what'd be interesting for me to know is the one that's got dumpsters, you know, is it just for that restaurant, or is there multiple restaurants using it? And, you know, not to get too deep in the grass, but that's some stuff we need to go over about, you know, if stuff's unlimited, then, you know, that could pose a problem moving forward.
I thought restaurants, there was some requirement that they had to have a dumpster.
I don't think there is, Mayor Harrison. I know we have some that we pick up, you know, just with the carts.
Yeah.
You've
If
heard
they
it?
have one, they have to screen it.
Yeah, in some places, you know, considering where the restaurants are, they don't have the room for a dumpster or
Right.
the capacity, so they have to set it out. But, you know,
Well,
without pointing any fingers, but if you got a lot of recycling, it's a lot of glass, you know, you take these totes. What happens is they'll set 20 of these totes out there, it's full of bottles, and then
Right.
it rains. And then, you know, you got these guys out here, they can barely pick these things up.
Well, it'd be
So-
sort of interesting to see, you know, in the review, maybe the review that you're gonna do here at year end, let's look at that restaurant topic, because there's 2 sides to that coin.
Right.
The the workflow and all that, we get that, we could work with that. But what's the motivation for them to have a dumpster versus us doing it? Because the dumpsters are not the most attractive things in the world.
Right, and even me thinking out loud and trying to think about the staff, you know, instead of those those small totes, I was talking about it may, and I'm not saying this and I ain't trying to say this is what we're gonna do because we need to talk about it, but even if the dumpster or the restaurants were required to have an actual toter to put the bottles in, then they could roll it to the truck and the truck could lift it.
Yeah, I guess maybe we should steer away from, from the planning part and have that in maybe a separate meeting and come back.
Exactly.
But-
Like I said, I don't get too deep in
That's
the
right.
grass, but.
Any other questions? All right, thank you,
Okay,
Jamie. We
thank you.
appreciate
Yep.
your work and pass along our appreciation to all your crew for all their hard work and dedication. We appreciate you. All right, Josh, the consent agenda.
All right, consent agenda consisting of 3 items. Item 5A is adoption of minutes. This will be August 20th, 2021 special call meeting, September 9th, 2021 agenda meeting, and the September 13th, 2021 regular session meeting. 5B is the budget amendment for fire department grant. This is something we applied for and really didn't think we were going to get it. We've done this in the past and we got lucky this year and got it. It's a substantial amount of money for our fire department, just short of $250,000 in funding. Our match is 10%, so it's almost $25,000. We want to pull that from our fund balance. This is going to set us up on air packs, new air packs for the whole department, and I think the lifespan on those is typically 10 to 15 years. So this is real good for us. And 5C would be a contract with Kendig Keast Collaborative for our Unified Development Ordinance. This is something we budgeted for this year and this year's budget for half of this cost, and we will plan to budget next year for the remainder of the cost. This company, they're out of Simpsonville, South Carolina, is where this firm, I think their home office is in Texas, but they'll be working out of Simpsonville. We ended up getting, I think, 3 or 4 different proposals from different folks. This ended up being, from Jessica and I's perspective, the best one for us. We thought it would fit us the best. The total cost for that Unified Development Ordinance project is just over $98,000. Excuse me. And that'll be your consent agenda.
And that was a budgeted item as well.
Yes, sir.
Any questions on the consent agenda? If not, I'd entertain a motion for approval.
So moved.
Thank you. Any comments or questions? In the hearing none, all those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Thank you. We have no unfinished business, but we do have some new business, intersection traffic studies presentation, NC9 Sidewalk Phase 3, golf equipment lease, an investment policy, discussion, and an amended contract for the Oaks Connector. Those are our new business items. If any member of the public wishes to speak toward any of those new business items, you can, and you have 3 minutes to do so if you'd like to do that. Okay, hearing none, we're off to our first item of new business, the intersection traffic studies presentation. And I think we have the
Colin.
engineer who did.
So I'll just give you a quick background. This is something we talked about a few months ago. We went into contract with TBP, Traffic Planning and Design, TBD. Is it TBD? TPD.
PPD.
Too many acronyms. And we specifically looked at 3 intersections. One was Tomahawk Avenue in Craigmon. The other was Laurel and 10th. And the last one was Craigmon, Hiawassee, and Bird. And Colin is going to give you a quick description of how that went and what we're looking forward to doing.
And Colin, your last name for the members of the public.
Kenton.
Kenton. Colin
Kenton.
Kenton.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes. How are y'all doing this evening?
Well,
So I'll just be brief. As Josh indicated, we looked at Craigmon at Tomahawk, Laurel and 10th, and Craigmon at Hiawassee and Bird, in doing an always stop analysis for each of those intersections. Primarily, when we want to do an engineering analysis of an intersection, we're looking at traffic volumes, we're looking at crash data, and then we're looking at the geometry of the intersection. All 3 of those intersections, we did collect traffic volumes over a 12-hour period. None of them are high volume intersections like like you have downtown. Fairly low volume, neighborhood type streets. Crash data, we checked with the Black Mountain Police Department, didn't see a whole lot of crashes. At the intersection, and then I'll just talk about geometry of each intersection, starting with Craigmon and Tomahawk. At that intersection, you do have sidewalk on Craigmon and then sidewalk going up Tomahawk. The other side's on Swananoa, there is no sidewalk. The couple items are significant in impacts to that intersection. One is on the northwest corner, you've got a retaining wall. And that retaining wall impacts, with the curvature in the road, it impacts your sight distance. On the southwest corner, it's hard to keep your, is the VFW building. And they actually have back out parking that backs out on the Craigmont. And when vehicles park there, that impacts your sight distance to be able to see down the road. And then on the southeast corner, Craigmont has a fairly good curve in the road there, horizontal curve. And because of the horizontal curve, the property there on the corner, a lot of growth of trees and brush, and that impacts your sight distance. Because of the sidewalks and the park, you've got the lake right there, you've got the tennis courts, so you've got a lot of pedestrian traffic going on. You have a lot of pedestrians crossing Craigmon. So based on the geometry and the limited sight distance at that intersection, we're recommending that an always stop be installed there. Again, that's just because in looking at, calculating the sight distance, we calculate, how quickly a car can stop or a truck. And so a car pulling out needs to be able to have enough time to pull out before that car comes around. And there is a limited amount of time. So that's why we recommend always stop there. At Laurel and 10th, Laurel is the through street, 10th is the stop street. In this case, there's significant vertical curves on both Laurel, specifically on Laurel, but also on 10th. So a vertical curve coming up Laurel that impacts sight distance. And in addition, you've got on the northeast corner, you've got an embankment on the adjacent property, and on the southeast corner, you've got an embankment that impacts sight distance. Very lightly amount of, very low traffic at the intersection. When we've been out there, we do see an occasional pedestrian, saw several kids running around, which is completely fine. Saw people on bikes, but the impact of the site distance, again, leads us to recommend an always stop there. Conversely, you don't want to, just to back up a minute, you don't want to put in too many always stops. If you're going to start to impact people just being able to maneuver around. But because of the volumes, we looked kind of, okay, is the stop going to cause problems by putting it in? And we did do an analysis of, is it going to cause too many delays? But because the volumes are actually pretty light, it's not, those impacts are going to be minimal. So the final intersection we looked at is Craigmon at Hiawassee and Bird. I'm sure you're aware that that is not your typical intersection. Hiawassee makes a sharp right-hand turn there. Craigmon makes a sharp right-hand turn, goes north, and goes east. Hiawassee comes in from the north. Bird comes in from the west. Bird and Hiawassee are stopped. So the odd thing is, one, you still have some sight distance issues there. You've got you got some vertical curves, you've got some steep approaches. But not only that, if you're coming north on Craigmon and you want to go straight or left, one, you have to know that Craigmon from the right does not stop. And then two, you have poor sight distance seeing to the right. So you've got sight distance issues, but also you have driver expectancy issues. Drivers coming on Craigmon aren't expecting to have to look to the right to yield if they want to go straight. And so because of that, we're recommending an always stop there. That intersection does the northbound Craigmon approach is the North Carolina secondary route. Hiawassee is the North Carolina secondary route. So that needs to go through NCDOT for their approval as well. And we're coordinating with the local division office about that.
Great. Thank you, Colin. Does anybody have any questions for Colin?
What are next steps on this? Do we just move forward with it, or is it something that we voted on? Or?
Well, I'm not sure, I'll look to the town attorney if there needs to be a vote, but I would foresee staff going ahead with the two intersections that are ours and go ahead and installing the stops. The DOT, and of course, we'll have to wait for that confirmation. That's correct.
So why don't I just entertain a motion that we approve if council, this is what council wants to do, that we accept the recommendations and agree with all of them and instruct the town staff to move forward. A motion to that extent.
So I would make that motion.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Any other comments or questions? Hearing none.
Actually, I do actually. Sorry. Are we talking about crosswalks where there are sidewalks? Are we talking about adding any crosswalks or not?
I would recommend adding a crosswalk to cross from the northeast corner at Craigmon and Tomahawk, from the northeast corner where the lake is to the southeast corner towards the tennis courts. There was a number of people crossing there, and I think the addition of a crosswalk there would be beneficial.
Right. So add that to the recommendations. Is there any other questions, comments? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
And opposed, no? Good, thank you, Colin, appreciate your time.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Colin.
The NC9 sidewalk, phase 3, Josh.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, this NC9 sidewalk phase 3, so this section, excuse me, runs from Jane Jacobs Road almost all the way to, I think that's Lakey Gap Road. I always get that, Old Lakey Gap. Old Lakey Gap, thank you, Jennifer. So it's about 450 linear feet of sidewalk, maybe a little bit more. We have budgeted, I think, $100,000 for this project. We've been working on this for a little while, getting the engineering, going back and forth with DOT. And one of the property owners that is affected the most by the sidewalk is requesting that the town, in exchange for an easement, that the town pay for and construct a wall and fence for about 400 linear feet of this property frontage. And that would be to separate pedestrians and the public from horses and other animals. That cost for the fence and the wall, I guess it is relatively expensive, about $70,000 for that cost. We were only able to get pretty much one quote, and I think that just shows the time we're in right now with folks being busy, folks being understaffed, and being unable to perform those typical services. So at this point, in order for us to get this sidewalk on the ground, we're gonna have to construct that wall and that fence for that cost. It's about $68,500, I think is the approximate cost.
Council, questions for Josh? No, sir, this is not a public comment for comment.
What kind of barrier is there now between the road and the horses?
I think there's a type of fence, but the barrier really up close to the road is a long line of Leland cypress trees.
So the trees even.
Trees will be removed, yes. There's not enough room to get the sidewalk in between the edge of the asphalt and the trees.
This cost of fencing and barriers, that's above our budgeted cost, is that correct?
It's above the budgeted cost for this sidewalk that we have at least budgeted for right now. I'll let the attorney speak to our previous practices on easements and building walls and things like that, if we've done that in the past. I know when we did the Montreat Road sidewalk, we didn't have to reconstruct a wall, but it was already there. We just had to move it back some.
So I have a question just on the the requesting, which is fine for the property owner to request the fence the way he wanted it. Were there less expensive alternatives?
There would be less expensive alternatives, yes.
So this would be setting a precedent in terms of design and, I mean, once you build especially attractive wall right there that everybody wants. How would that work?
We've been working on sidewalks ever since we started it in the middle of town and with Montreat. And if we've had any blessing at all, is the citizens of Black Mountain, from the middle of Black Mountain all the way to Montreat, out Craigmon Road, when those sidewalks are built. Had a little pushback time to time, but everybody gave an easement. Like Josh said, there were 2 or 3 places we had to move some walls, and those people weren't, just give us a wall. They didn't come out and want to go in a wall. People have been very helpful, and so we don't have the history of going out and buying the easement and paying large amounts of consideration of particular property owners. Whether or not that sets a precedent legally, it doesn't. In the mind of the person who you're trying to cross, it might. They might start seeing this, if you want easement across it, what's in it for me? Their history, fortunately, has been their citizens have said, this is great for the town, take a piece of my yard. So it's, we said, legal precedent, does it bind you to do it in the future? No. In the minds of the citizens, does it set something that they look at as an example? Obviously.
Well, I don't have a problem building a wall. I mean, I think it's a fair request to separate the animals from the walkway. I'm just concerned that we're building a really fancy wall. You know, I don't have a sense of what we're talking about in terms of design.
So it would be a rock wall that's about it's a knee wall, so it's about knee high, and then there would be a fence on top of that wall.
I'll say that I'm as big an advocate of completing the sidewalk as anyone. But in this particular case, just, what was it, Larry? Just a year or so ago, we had in this other phase with Cheshire, where we would not make an accommodation for stamped concrete. I feel that this is similar to that request, where we're being asked to make an accommodation that really is going to just expend all of our funds that we've got budgeted for the sidewalk itself, which would not be beneficial to the project or to the community. With that in mind, my thought on it is to deny this request from this property owner at this point and just continue negotiations to see if we can find a different compromise. I do want to make that motion.
So the motion is to deny the request, but to continue to pursue communications with
Happy.
Ross to see if you can come to a conclusion. Anybody have any questions on that motion that Ryan has made?
If we're continuing to pursue negotiations, will that hold up in moving on to another phase or another project or anything like that?
I think this was probably the last phase in that sidewalk itself. So there's 3 phases, one unbuilt, one's existing, which is, rock dust path now through Cheshire, and then of course this phase, so.
So in light of Ryan's motion that he's made, come back and report to us in 1 or 2 months.
Be happy
That
to.
sound agreeable to
That'd be
you,
fine.
Ryan?
Sounds fantastic.
Then we can go from there.
Sure.
In light of the season, we probably had a lot of time to negotiate.
That's true.
So any other questions on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor, aye.
Aye.
And opposed, no. Thank you, Ryan.
Absolutely.
Golf equipment lease.
So Our golf equipment lease, this is something that this is standard for us for the golf course, is our leasing the equipment. We have so much equipment out there, from fairway mowers to greens mowers to things I can't even pronounce, that, it's very expensive to try and buy all that equipment at one time. The lease you have before you, we ended up getting bids from a few different organizations, and the one that staff is recommending would be the Toro company, who we currently have lease with, and their bid came in about $1,000 a month cheaper than the John Deere bid. $8,045.85 for the John Deere bid, and the Toro bid is $7,298.78. So this would be for a 5-year lease term.
Good, thank you. Any questions for Josh?
Josh, so at the end of the 5-year lease, it's just the equipment's turned back in, is that correct?
That is correct, sir.
Any other questions for Josh?
And I'll say that this will not happen immediately. This will be, the lease expires in May, so we just want to go ahead and get this done, give that time to get the equipment.
Supply chain, you might.
We're still waiting on our golf carts.
Any other questions? If not, I'd entertain a motion to approve the lease agreement.
So moved.
Thank you. Hearing no other questions, all those in favor, aye.
Aye.
And opposed, no. Investment policy.
All right, I'm gonna have our finance director, Tammy, come up and speak to you a little bit about the investment policy. We talked a little bit about it in our agenda meeting, and I'm just gonna let her do a little more of a deep dive for the council and mayor.
Good evening, council, mayor. So I presented to you the investment policy that I created. So General Statute 159 states that the finance officer shall manage the investment subject to whatever restrictions and direction the governing board may impose. That was pretty much the reason the investment policy is needed. The policy is set in place for the restrictions and directions for the current staff and any future staff that may come on board to make sure that the funds are invested safely and wisely. That policy that you have was created based on templates that I got from the NCCMT, the GFOA, and I also pulled several investment policies from other municipalities and got examples and put it together. It provides guidance on how the funds should be managed to make sure that they're secure, efficient, and professionally invested to achieve primary objective while conforming to federal, state, and other legal requirements, including General Statute 159. So that's it in a nutshell. If you have any other questions about the policy.
And if I could for just a second, just let me interject for just a second. And I think, our intent with this is to make sure everyone's comfortable, right, with this policy. Right now, we have most of our funds in NCCMT. We do have some funds over at Black Mountain Savings. Typically, in a typical year, and I know this isn't a typical year, but typically we get around $80,000 of investment income. This last year, due to COVID and the interest rates being what they are, we ended up getting about $2,000 in investment income, which is a substantial difference. So we just want to make sure that council and mayor are comfortable with it, and that if there are options that are safe options, of course, where we can invest it wisely to get some more bang for the buck.
Right.
I think that's the
Right,
intent.
thank you. Well, I would add, along with the drop in investment income, that if you're talking fixed income investment vehicles, you join the rest of the order.
Yeah.
That's just where you are. But if I could, and thank you, Tammy, for your work on this. I think it's a good thing to get in place. But if it's agreeable to council, I had spoken to Josh about this earlier, and I would like for him to dig a little deeper in it because he has not had time to do so, and I have some questions really for he and Tammy to talk about together, and we may want to flesh it out a little bit in the policy. One being just the idea of asset allocation, which is addressed in your policy, but I'd like you to explore I think the idea of that being presented in a little more, a little more of a direct manner to council for approval before you move forward with it, because these are pretty broad, you know. There's a couple of them are, you know, you can invest up to 25% in commercial paper, you can invest up to 25% in bankers' acceptances, I could,
Yeah.
kind of going from memory. And 25% is a lot, you know. And so I think we might want to refine that, and I think the reporting to council, we might want to, you know, take a look at that and refine it a bit. Once a year is not bad. I know you can always do more than once a year, but I think we might want to consider starting a little more frequently. It doesn't necessarily have to be a prepared presentation, but it can be included in the minutes and so forth. We might start with one, but I don't think it would take long. But just, and there may be a couple of other things that I just like to, for you all to have time to flesh out and then bring back, and we may not make any changes, and the council may be happy with it the way it is, or we may want to do that. But we can then talk about the changes that you do make the next time it comes up.
And those are things that can be, you know, changed based on your recommendations. And like I said, that, you know, the bones of it was just based on templates that I got from the LGC and the GFOA and, you know, Buncombe County, I pulled their, you know, their policy and like the city of Hendersonville and Hickory and those places and put it together. So I did see in there were, like NCCMT, there is no regulations on how much you can have in there. You know, you can have all of your money in there and it stays safe. And if you do go with a broker, from my experience using brokers, the ones that you use for government, it's usually a bank that has these brokers, and they have to be trained on what they can invest these monies in. It's just to put in place, you know, we are not going to invest more. We want our money to be liquid. We want it to be safe. We want these guidances to be in place.
Just for the public's benefit, any investment we're talking about has to, the general statutes, the North Carolina general statutes are really pretty stringent. You just don't have unlimited options.
Yeah, you can't go stocks and, you know,
Well, the people who handle the money also have to have particular approval, really.
It's very strict, and they can lose their jobs if they invest in the wrong thing, and
these people could too.
Yeah. And I could. So it is nothing to play around with. But you know, when you're looking at investments, and NCCMT is a really good place to have money, but when you're looking at, like, you know, $250,000 versus, you know, $20,000, that's a big difference in money. And you know, it can be, usually you want to do short-term investments so it's not tied up for a long time, and you have that readily available. It's just you want to make sure that you are getting everything you can out of the town's investment. So.
Sure. Well, that sounds good. And if anyone has any comments or questions, just feed them to Josh and, you know, about it. But those are the couple of things: reporting and approval of the asset allocation, you know, ranges more specifically than are in there now. And the other would be, when I say approval, that be approved by council. And then maybe consider, you've got your limits in there of specific investments that can't exceed a certain bit. And just for it to be specific enough to give you guidance, to also protect you, but also give council a chance to make the appropriate approvals and so forth of any significant changes.
Yeah, and most of this, whenever you enter into an agreement with a investment broker, or even how I spoke to you about the new investment group for Western North Carolina municipalities, that has to come before the board for approval anyway. A lot of times with the investment broker, they don't lay out exactly what they're investing in at the time, but usually those come before approval, before I can do those anyway.
All right,
so.
that sounds good. You can just bring it back to us. I don't think there's a particular rush on it, but just bring it
No.
back to us. But now that it's underway,
When we're
Yeah.
ready, we'll bring it back.
there you go. That sounds
Nothing's
good.
making money right now anyway, so.
Thank you very much,
Thank
Tammy.
you.
Thanks for your work on that. Our next item is the amended contract for the Oaks Connector.
So we have Mr. Fred Grogan here with MBI, and of course Jessica is here as well to talk through some of the, if there's any questions on the contract. Essentially, what you have in front of you is the contract where we split these apart. So this will be the contract to finish up the engineering design, right-of-way stuff for the Oaks Connector, which of course runs from Black Mountain, excuse me, it runs, let's just say it runs from Black Mountain Avenue to the Oaks. I know it's gonna come up more than likely up NC9 a little ways, but that's essentially what it is the amended contract to perform those services to get us to construction for the Oaks.
Great. Thank you. Oh, okay. Well, you might come up and sit and see. I'd ask you to make any unnecessary moves, but let's see if anybody has any questions while they're looking over it. Give them just a second just to take a peek. While we're at it, do you have any summary comments to make about it while they're looking
I'll
at
just
it?
clarify that this is going from Terry Estates to the existing trail.
Right.
And that now that this is established, we can move forward to scoping section A. And we will be doing that and we'll follow with a similar document in the next several, couple of months.
This is split on two different roads, a pedestrian sidewalk and then a bike lane.
For part of it, yes. And then full greenway at the back.
Between you and Josh, just hit the high points of the contract as far as cost and.
So yeah, they're gonna, the contract, the scope of services is pretty extensive, and, essentially they're gonna do everything that they need to be doing, from state of the store preservation, on decor, all the dots and Ts you have to cross for federal projects,
Right.
essentially. So it's a long list of stuff. Let me get to the back here. So the cost, and this cost may not be set in stone. Right now, it's $255,875.29. This still has to go through DOT. Essentially, DOT is our auditor for these types of projects, so they have to approve all the costs. This gets sent to them, and I'm hopeful that it doesn't take them near as long as it did the last time to go through these numbers. But
Right, and we want to remind the public where the funds are coming from.
sure. So the 80% of these funds are coming from Federal Highway Administration, and we go through our Metropolitan Planning Organization to get these funds. This is kill you with acronyms. An STPDA project, Service Transportation Direct Allocation. That's changed a few times. It may be something different now as I speak. But we apply for these funds and
They're all LAP.
all local.
Locally administered projects. That's right.
We apply for these funds. We've been in this round of funding now for, I think we got in around 2015 or 16 initially to start this funding.
Yep.
So we're still working through this process. Obviously, it's taken a long time. I think when we got into it, they told me it'd probably take 10 years to get through it. So I think we're probably on that at this time. But these funds come from the federal government. It's an 80-20 match. We pay 20% and they take the rest of the 80%.
So, if council approves this evening, what sort of hopefully timeframe are we looking at for moving forward?
So it'll take about 4 weeks, we think, for it to get audited. And if nothing comes back, now I've seen them come back with a 3-cent adjustment to one line item. That will be amended in this Excel document to the end all Excel documents called the kitchen sink. And that gets updated, puts back in, they check that modification has been made. And then we can execute everything. And that also feeds into generating agreements with DOT for the town. So there are multiple contracts informed by these numbers.
So hopefully by the end of November, we're hopeful we can get those contracts ready.
Yes,
That'd be
November
great.
is our goal for this section.
Yeah.
And then hopefully January for the other section.
And when would we be starting construction?
I didn't bring my, but I didn't
What's your best
bring my
guess,
calendar with me.
Fred? We're gonna hold you to it.
What did we say, we just looked at all these
We
numbers
did.
today and updated.
They changed them all.
Actually, I've got it right here, sorry.
We had to revise everything based on these new schedules.
Yeah.
This morning.
We have, a June 23 that day, and it's gonna be DOT tonight, so.
Right.
June, we're hoping to get it started.
For this section and then spring 24 for the other section. We'll have additional contracts with DOT to administer the construction part of the project.
Or any time we could shave, we'll shave it.
There you go. That's great. All right, any other, yeah,
That's good, so just tell me again, where is this phase? This is from Black Mountain Avenue down Vance?
Think of the public parking lot near at the Public Works building.
Yeah.
There
Oh,
and over.
okay,
And they go forward, and then we have Vance in the back, and we
Okay.
have connecting tour at the existing trail.
okay, all
And
the
it-
way down to the
Mhm.
trail.
And
it's
this
Terry
is,
Estates Drive, isn't it?
yes,
Yeah, okay.
and so this
Got it.
is section B, and section A will go from the intersection of 9 and Sutton to there, to Black Mountain Avenue.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions for Jessica or Fred or Josh? If not, I'd entertain a motion to approve the contract as presented.
So moved.
Thank you. Any other questions? Hearing none, all those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Thank you. I guess you'll just stay
I'll
right
just
there.
stay here.
All righty. So we have a public hearing to close a portion of the unopened, platted portion of Alexander Street. And I will entertain a motion that we open the public hearing. Very good. Go right ahead.
Right, so this is the typical right-of-way closure hearing we're used to having, but there is a little bit of a caveat in the recommendation. So Ron might have to pinch hit for me on some of these details of how this works. But the two property owners did submit a petition to close an unopened platted portion of Alexander Street. The request for the closure, the area is about 150 feet in length and 40 feet wide, so it's sizable. The right-of-way is not identified in any adopted plans for greenway or pedestrian plans or even road development or anything like that. And nor it's not part of the stormwater system either, identified plan or project. The planning board recommended the closure of the right-of-way, but asked to reserve a 20-foot wide easement down the center in case there was a future need for pedestrian or vehicular traffic. And that was the recommendation with a 3-2 vote. And that is different than we've done it in the past, but
Quasi-closure.
so closure, and they have use of it until such a time if the town wanted to put in some sort of sidewalk, then that easement would be there for that. That's the gist.
Okay. Does any member of the public wish to make any comment? Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion that we close the public hearing. Great, thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Great. So, just for council's benefit and the public as well, where is Alexander Street?
So Alexander Street is, if you're going up Montreat Road and off Penelope, where
Mhm.
Penelope kind of curves back, Alexander dead ends behind Penelope. And there is, I think there at one point maybe it was a footpath, but it has since grown up. When we went to post the property, we couldn't identify any readily available like cow path, kind of thing.
Rod, do you have any comment to make about the unique nature of the request?
Well, this is one that Anna and I debated because I disagreed with her initially. she's the one that advised the planning board when they were talking about whether or not they could reserve an easement. There's this feeling in my stomach I get as a dirt lawyer, and I'm sure Bill's sitting on the other end feeling the same way, because when the town closes a street, what it's doing is, we're not closing anything because we never took it. We're simply telling you we will never accept it. And so how do I, something I never accepted, how do I reserve an easement in something I never had? I don't know, but the legislature thinks you can. The wording of the ordinance or the statute allows you to close a street, allows you to reserve easements of a different nature in those things, and specifically utilities and obviously access. So I think you can do what's being proposed, although it does rub against the dirt lawyer part of me pretty hard.
Well, so, but that is actually the ability to close the street, but maintain the utility easement or an easement for not just utilities, but for whatever.
But for
Is,
in this case, pedestrian access.
I mean, maybe I'm amiss here, but I think it's an attractive option. Because at least it doesn't take all the options away from you, and I thought before we kind of had a hard time thinking that we could do that sometimes. Am I right about that?
Well, again, I've always, my sense about it, and again, this is an untested part of the statute. In the past, whenever we knew there were water lines, sewer lines, and things within them, we obviously clearly reserved those easements for those lines. In places where we thought we might put a water line or a sewer line, the town just didn't close it. But the statute as written now does allow you to reserve easements, and you don't have to be existing use of the road of the, they call it an easement, has been used. But you're closing an easement for a road, and you're reserving an easement of a lesser scale, right, as an access easement. And the statute does say you can do that. Okay, thank you. Questions?
So Ron, normally, I mean, you know a lot more about it than I do, but I mean, normally if you close this, doesn't that split the fee ownership to the property owners on either side?
It does.
So that will still happen, but subject to this retained potential easement?
This is an old subdivision that was laid out where all the lot lines ran to the edge of the right of way instead of the center of the road subject to the easement. And so by closing it, then the lot lines do run to the center, but we're reserving an easement along that usual line. What that does for the neighbors is, this is a bigger, rear backyard and setback, and for the community saves and access for everyone, trying to, the town's trying to push pedestrian access everywhere, and I think the planning board's point of view, we can do that if we reserve that easement. Any other questions?
So, council, what are your thoughts on resolution R 21-22?
I think it's a good compromise. And I would make a motion to approve what's the wording here?
The resolution?
Yeah, approve the resolution presented.
Great, thank you for that. Any other questions? Hearing none, all those in favor of resolution R 21-22, the right-of-way closure that we've discussed this evening, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no. Thank you. I think we are done with our agenda. Mr. Sneed, do you have anything else to add this evening?
Couple things. I think Josh sent out a little notice that came in about Senate Bill 300, which is, I know if you're bored, which is now Session Law 2021-138. That's part of the criminal justice, or the criminal law reformation statute. And what that's done is decriminalize a lot of local ordinances, most of those being their nuisance ordinances, their zoning ordinances, and plan ordinances. We'll have to go through and audit and sort of update our ordinances. I'm not real worried about it because the town of Black Mountain has been trying to decriminalize those for years. so we don't have a lot of them left. A couple of years ago, the legislature, and as they worked toward this particular statute, had the towns provide a report on how many local ordinances they had that were not traffic ordinances that had criminal penalties. And we did that inventory already. It's a matter of me finding that file, finding the ones where we still have criminal ordinances and simply proposing to the board an amendment to take care of those. To remove the ones that the statute says should be in. The other point is House Bill 401, which has been hanging out there. That's the one that would make any lot that can have a single family residence on it, ever have a residence on it, in Black Mountain. A single family residence would now suddenly mean it could be up to a quadruplex. That bill hasn't moved out of committee, but this is turning into an extraordinarily long legislative session, so can't count on it going away yet. That's obviously, should that pass, going to make a big deal about planning and have the strange effect of, in Black Mountain, being able to put up to 4 living units on 1/8 of an acre, 32 units per acre, whereas we thought we were going to have 8. But that's still hanging in committee, but it's not dead yet. Thank you, Ron. Josh?
A couple things. So, we're still working on there's been some questions at least that have came through my email, and I think I've talked to a couple of you about it, but a crosswalk on Broadway. We're still working with DOT on getting those numbers. We did give them 1 count, which was not sufficient to provide a crosswalk.
This is anybody.
This is a mid-block crossing, that's correct.
They took that away about 5 years ago.
They sure did.
Did they
So-
think about giving it back?
Well, if the numbers can come back in favor, then yes, they would think about letting us do it. So that is ongoing. Hopefully we'll get those numbers this month and get those back to DOT so we can get an answer.
So how do you get the numbers on there?
So you have to go out there and count, actually
Can you
count
count the whole
people.
street, because they cross the street every day.
I think you're just counting in that area.
You have to count it at the location of where the crosswalk would be, which is a certain distance from the intersection.
Uh-huh.
And it has to be 4 counts within the same day. And we dispersed, we distributed counts evenly. 3 of them were across threshold, 1 didn't. And they said, well, you can do them all later in the day if you want. And I was like, okay, then we'll try that.
You can't notify the public that you're gonna have to cross the walk.
I guess this could be that notice right now. As soon as we get those, and if they are favorable, then we'll pursue, a budget for that, to see what that looks like.
Right.
Secondly, the Cvs Sidewalk, I know it's taken us a long time, and I'm really embarrassed about this, but it's no fault of our own. It's taken us 7 months to get a survey for this sidewalk project. We have now gotten that done, and the encroachment agreement has been submitted to DOT, so I'm hopeful that can move quickly. And so I'm talking about a sidewalk that will run from essentially from CVS down to the little shopping center where Kiwanis thrift store around the Riley's is. So it would support pedestrian activity. That way we can put a crosswalk across State Street. And then lastly, we are working with FEMA still for Tropical Storm Fred to get some of these damages covered. I've had 2 phone calls with them. I now have a standing phone call with them every Thursday, and we're moving through that process. It's not a quick process, but we're moving through it, and I'm hopeful that we'll get some funds for at least, at a minimum, the bridge replacement on the golf course and the greenway work. And that's it for me.
Thank you. The only thing I have is just to inform council that, by request from a citizen, I inquired as to the other municipalities in the county and where they stood on town offices being closed, like ours are, they have been closed, but you get appointments to do work. And it is my understanding, and Josh can confirm it up, but my understanding from our communication with other municipalities that only Woodford and Black Mountain are closed in the manner that we are. And the others are encouraging appointments, but are not closed in the manner we are. I think that's maybe because of the council. So that's all I have. Any member of council have anything?
I have something. A bunch of numbers here, so I wrote it down. I believe it's time we explore opportunities for a significant investment in our pedestrian cycling and road improvement plans. And with the council's blessing, I would like to ask staff to identify a few things for us: the highest need and highest impact projects, a lower cost and a higher cost option to address these projects, potential funding opportunities, and the impacts on those funding opportunities on the budget and on taxpayers. I suggest this because over the last decade, we have adopted large-scale and inspiring plans like the bike plans, pedestrian plans, and comprehensive plans. And while we've made some progress, we currently average only about $140,000 a year on repaving and $93,000 a year on sidewalks, and nothing for bike lanes or cycling improvements. Looking just at streets, we're repaving about 3/4 of a mile per year on average, which means it would take about 57 years to repave every street managed by the town. I believe there is significant opportunity for improving neighborhood connectivity, downtown aesthetics and handicap accessibility, road infrastructure, and even potentially stormwater management with road and sidewalk improvements. But of course, you have to find a way to pay for it and to understand the interest and the appetite of the community for such an investment. That's why it seems like the first step should be for us to ask staff to look into those options and present those to us. So I'm asking now if the council would support me in doing so.
Council? I've already spoken to Josh about it, and I think it's perfectly fine. Perfectly fine, a good thing, a good exercise for council. And so if council's in great with that, I'll just direct Josh to do that. We can then we'll just have a workshop one morning. I think that's the best way to approach it, give us time to look at it, discuss it, and if we need to have 2 workshops or 3, we'll do that. It would also just be a good prelude, if that's the right word, for the budget.
So just to be clear, what we're talking about is starting a conversation. We're not talking about any particular plan or method. We're just looking at options and also making sure there's plenty of time for public input in any of this conversation, correct?
Sure, that's good.
That's the way it always works. I just want to make it really clear. Yeah.
In our workshop, what I would suggest is we have a workshop and we conduct them in the manner that we usually do, which is without public comment, but then we can hold a session for public comment and just that alone. After any plans that do come out are, they're clear, vetted, and this is what council's decided, if whatever becomes of the workshops and the study and staff work. How does that sound?
That sounds great to me.
All right, thanks, Josh. Tammy's here, there you go. Another job. Anybody else, council?
I have one last comment. I just wanted to recognize that today is Indigenous Peoples' Day and to honor the 8 tribes of North Carolina who have, and their contributions to our state and to our nation.
Thank you. Councilmember King, anybody else? So I think that is the end of our agenda. We do have a closed session to discuss personnel matters as permitted by North Carolina General Statute 143-318.116.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Meeting adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, go ahead.